Imagine a massive 18-foot block of ruined marble, scarred, botched, and left to rot in the courtyard of a cathedral for 40 agonizing years. Every master sculptor of the age looks at it and declares it completely useless. The stone is dead. But one man walks up to this towering mutilated rock, stares into its pale depths, and does not see a mistake. He sees a giant waiting to breathe. He sees absolute perfection trapped in the stone, screaming to be let out. And he becomes utterly, dangerously obsessed with setting it free. This is the story of a man whose hands bled from the chisel, whose body was physically broken by his own towering ambition, and whose mind was an endless tempest of divine inspiration and agonizing self-doubt. He was difficult, arrogant, completely isolated, and utterly brilliant. He did not merely carve stone. He waged a violent war against it until it yielded to his will. This is the story of Michelangelo, the man obsessed with tearing perfection from the earth. He was not born to create, at least not in the eyes of his father. Born in 1475 in the small republic of Florence, Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni belonged to a family of minor nobility that had fallen on hard times. His father viewed manual labor, especially the dusty, back-breaking work of an artist, as beneath their status. He regularly beat the young boy to discourage his constant drawing. But you cannot beat the tide into stopping, and you cannot beat the genius out of a boy who was quite literally nourished by stone. Because his mother was chronically ill, the infant Michelangelo was sent to live with a wet nurse whose husband was a stonecutter. He would later say that with his nurse's milk, he sucked in the heavy hammers and sharp chisels he used for his statues. The chisel was deep in his blood. By his early teens, his sheer, undeniable force of will broke his father's resistance. He was apprenticed to a painter, but brushes and flat pigments were simply not enough for him. He needed mass. He needed weight. He found his way into the powerful Medici family's legendary sculpture garden, catching the eye of Lorenzo the Magnificent himself. Here, among the ancient statues, the boy flourished. But his raw talent was matched only by his explosive arrogance. He was sharp-tongued, quick to brutally criticize the work of his peers, and deeply unpopular among the other apprentices. One day, his mocking went too far. A rival student, Pietro Torrigiano, flew into a blinding rage and punched Michelangelo squarely in the face, crushing his nose to the bone. That violent disfigurement would remain with Michelangelo for the rest of his long life, a permanent physical reminder of the cost of his pride and a face that mirrored the rough, unyielding stones he would soon come to master. In 1496, the young sculptor arrived in Rome. He was 21 years old, practically unknown, yet possessing a terrifying confidence in his own hands. It was here he received a commission from a French cardinal to create a sculpture of the Virgin Mary holding the dead body of Jesus, the Pietà. What he created over the next 2 years defied human comprehension. He took cold, lifeless Carrara marble and magically turned it into warm, breathing flesh, heavy, folding fabric, and profound, silent grief. When you look at the Pietà, you completely forget that it is stone. You see the heavy, lifeless weight of a dead son in his mother's arms. You see the delicate, loving pressure of her fingers actually sinking into the flesh of his ribs. When it was finally unveiled, the public was captivated. It was a miracle. But one afternoon, Michelangelo stood quietly near his masterpiece and overheard a group of visitors praising the breathtaking work. To his absolute horror, they confidently attributed the sculpture to another rival artist from Milan. The thought of another man taking credit for his blood and sweat was unbearable. That night, under the cover of utter darkness, armed with a lantern and his chisels, he broke into the church. In a fit of immense, fierce pride, he furiously carved his name directly across the sash on the Virgin Mary's chest. Michelangelo Buonarroti, Florentine, made this. It was an act of extreme ego, and it was the only piece of art he ever signed. He later regretted this sudden outburst of vanity and swore never to sign another work, letting the absolute, terrifying perfection of his art be his only signature. But his ultimate legendary battle with the stone was yet to come. In 1501, he returned to Florence. Waiting for him was the giant, that 18-foot block of ruined marble abandoned for 4 decades. The city leaders wanted to know if anything at all could be salvaged from it. Michelangelo did not just see a salvage operation, he saw his absolute masterpiece waiting in the dark. To prevent anyone from seeing his intensely private process, he built a massive wooden enclosure entirely around the block. For nearly 3 years, he practically lived inside that wooden shell. He worked relentlessly, day and night, often sleeping in his dusty clothes and heavy boots, eating only bread and a little wine, driven by a manic, obsessive energy. He was notorious for refusing to bathe, his boots sometimes having to be literally cut from his swollen, bleeding feet. He chipped, filed, and polished in agonizing secrecy. When the wooden walls finally came down in 1504, the entire city of Florence fell completely, utterly silent. David, standing over 17 feet tall, it was not the victorious young boy usually depicted holding Goliath's severed head. No, this was David in the terrifying moment right before the battle. The incredible tension in his muscles, the veins popping in his right hand, the fierce, terrifying focus burning in his eyes. It was a god molded from the earth. Michelangelo had achieved the impossible. He had taken a rejected, dead stone and forced breathing life into it. In that moment, he became a living legend. Yet his greatest curse came from the man who commanded the Christian world. Pope Julius II, a warrior pope with a terrifying temper to match the artist's own, ordered Michelangelo back to Rome, but not to sculpt. He ordered him to paint the massive ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo was furiously indignant. He argued, he pleaded, he even tried to flee Rome entirely. "I am not a painter," he angrily declared. "I am a sculptor." He deeply suspected that his rivals, particularly the architect Bramante, had secretly convinced the Pope to give him this impossible commission, hoping the sculptor would fail miserably and publicly at a medium he despised. But you do not refuse a Pope. And so began 4 years of pure, unadulterated physical agony. Michelangelo designed his own complex scaffolding standing up near the ceiling, his neck craned painfully backward for endless hours on end. Wet plaster and toxic paint dripped directly into his eyes, nearly blinding him. He worked in cramped, suffocating conditions, enduring blistering, suffocating heat in the summer and bone-chilling cold in the winter. He fired almost all his assistants, preferring to work in absolute, maddening isolation. He wrote bitter, depressed poems to his friends, describing his body warping, his spine bending backward like a Syrian bow, and his face covered in a thick, colorful crust of paint drops. Yet out of this profound misery and spite, he birthed the heavens. The Sistine Chapel ceiling became a foundational cornerstone of human achievement. The creation of Adam, where the lazy finger of God reaches across the cosmic void to spark life into humanity, is permanently etched into the collective memory of the human race. He completely proved his rivals wrong. He was not just the greatest sculptor in the world. He had inexplicably become its greatest painter, entirely against his own will. Decades later, an older, much more cynical Michelangelo was called back to the Sistine Chapel. This time, he was ordered to paint the massive altar wall with the Last Judgment. It was a terrifying, chaotic vision of the end of the world, filled with hundreds of twisting, heavily muscled, completely naked figures being violently dragged down to hell or pulled up into heaven. The work deeply shocked the conservative elements of the Catholic Church. One high-ranking papal official, Biagio da Cesena, fiercely criticized the painting, declaring that it was a profound disgrace to have so many naked figures displaying themselves so openly in a holy place. He claimed it was a work better suited for a public tavern than a papal chapel. Michelangelo's revenge was swift, petty, and immortal. He painted Cesena's exact face onto the grotesque body of Minos, the demonic judge of the underworld. He placed him deep in hell with donkey ears to signify his utter foolishness. and a giant, demonic serpent coiled tightly around his body, actively biting off his genitals. When Sistine furiously complained to the Pope and begged him to have the face removed, the Pope supposedly laughed and replied that his jurisdiction unfortunately did not extend to hell, and the portrait would have to remain. It is still there to this very day, a brilliant masterclass in holding a grudge, but Michelangelo was never truly at peace. As he grew older, his obsession only deepened, taking on a darker, much more philosophical tone. He deliberately began to leave works unfinished, a haunting style known as non finito. Look at his statues of the slaves. They are deeply unsettling. Massive, incredibly muscular figures twisting and writhing, seemingly trying to physically tear themselves out of the raw, uncut marble. They perfectly capture the very essence of Michelangelo's entire worldview, the divine, perfect human soul, trapped hopelessly inside the heavy, earthly prison of the physical body, fighting desperately to be free. He worked with a furious, frightening speed, attacking the marble with such extreme violence that bright sparks flew from the heavy chisel. A witness once noted that in 15 minutes, the elderly Michelangelo knocked off more thick marble than 3 young, strong stone masons could in an hour, and with such fierce impetuosity that it seemed the entire work would shatter into a million pieces. He lived to be nearly 89 years old, a truly astonishing lifespan for the 16th century. By the very end, he was a deeply religious, incredibly lonely man, wealthy beyond measure but choosing to live like a poor pauper. He never married, pouring every single ounce of his passion, love, and fury strictly into his work. In his final days, frail and nearing the end of his extraordinary life, he was found walking alone in the pouring, freezing rain in Rome. When a friend asked why he was out in such terrible weather, the old master simply replied, "I am still learning." Michelangelo died in 1564, leaving behind an artistic legacy that has never been eclipsed. He was a tyrant of the arts, a man who bent popes to his iron will, terrified his rivals, and repeatedly pushed his own physical body to the absolute brink of total destruction. He saw divine perfection where ordinary men saw garbage. He heard the faint heartbeat of angels inside silent, abandoned quarries. He was not a gentle creator. He was a violent conqueror who wrestled beauty out of the rigid earth by sheer force. His story is a brilliant, terrifying testament to the sheer power of human obsession. When you look at his incredible works today, you are not looking at carved stone. You are looking at the frozen, immortal echoes of a genius who simply refused to accept the limits of the material world. If this journey into the past has captivated you, don't forget to leave a like. It's the best way to support this project and help keep history alive. To continue uncovering the mysteries of the most fascinating figures who once walked this earth, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss our next journey through time. Until next time.